Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rob and today we are going to be painting an Imperial Fists Terminator. In fact, one of the new Terminators from 40k, one of the Assault Terminators. So this guy is armed with a Storm Shield and a Thunderhammer. These models are absolutely awesome and it's a real pleasure to paint them, and it's also a bit of a doddle to paint them with a sponge as well. So if you like those kind of like cool panel modulation over your Space Marines or over your models, but you don't have an airbrush, then this is going to be the tutorial for you. This is part of a bundle, so the paints today I'm going to be using is part of the bundle, with the exception of a white, a dark silver and a light silver. However, everything else you can get as part of an Army Painter bundle using the link down below, and it's just, you know, put it all in your basket and made easy for you. And if you use the code MEDAS5 at checkout, you get 5% off as well. And here you can see the Terminator that we are going to be painting up. Well, we are going to start with our model primed in white, and then we give that a base coat of fiendish yellow. You can use a sponge, or alternatively just a largish base brush, I think would be my preference for this. Once we've done that, we're going to then add our washes, our tones to the model, and we're going to be using orange tone. So this is not usually a tone that I use very often for Imperial Fists. I would usually use something like a brown, but actually the end result really looks really nice, really pleased with that, and this is definitely something that I'll be wanting to play with in the future. And in fact, I've bought a Redemptor Dreadnought, and I was originally thinking of doing it in Blood Angels colours, but now I've done this tutorial, I was thinking actually doing a kind of like a follow-on tutorial using that Redemptor Dreadnought to kind of look at larger models when kind of doing some sponge painting. So let me know if you want to see that, or alternatively if you want to see a different tutorial using that Redemptor Dreadnought, let me know. So the head, I have gone for white, just primed it in white, and then I'm applying a dark skin shade over the top of that. That kind of creates like a dark brownish, you know, kind of vibe over the model. Works quite well for white. Yeah, it's dark enough to kind of almost like register as black, but adds, yeah, a bit more interest than just a normal black. And we'll come back to this a little bit later once it's dried. And then we're going to move on to our sponge painting. So you can see there I'm using one of the smaller sponges, a beauty blender, if you're looking at for it online. And then I've just soaked it in some water, removed most of the water, and then I just dip it in some paint and then wipe most of the paint away on some kitchen towel. Don't use something like toilet paper because it will just start to come apart. Kitchen towel is perfect for this, or just even on the side of your desk. And then what you can see me doing here, once that tone, that orange tone has dried completely, I'm just applying the fiendish yellow, or reapplying the fiendish yellow to areas where I think that the light is going to hit. Now, I've done lots of tutorials like this before. You can kind of use those as references, or alternatively you can fast forward this video to kind of like look at the references in terms of like the finished product. But I'm really focusing on those boulder-like shoulders, the chest, the front of the legs, and then I do that in reverse on the back as well. So I do it on the back of the legs and on key areas. Next up, we're going to hit it with demonic yellow. So this is kind of like moving up to our next colour, to our lighter colours now. Now, you could stop at any point if you wanted to. This demonic yellow, I did think that it looked really nice if you want something a little bit darker. Or even you could stop at the fiendish yellow if you really wanted to, if you wanted to sort of a very muted yellow. But this brings a lot of life and a lot of vibrancy and a lot of colour to it, the demonic yellow, and it's a yellow that I use an awful lot when, you know, doing things like eye lenses, because it's got good coverage and it's got a bit of a pop to it as well. But as you can see, it really does add some vibrancy to the overall model, and again focusing on those key areas where I think the light is going to be hitting the model, and then I can start to very slowly create fades. If I work in a smaller and smaller band of light where I'm hitting with the sponge, it means that actually I can create those kind of fades that we might see typically on an airbrush, but I can just create them with a with the sponge. Now finally we're going to move to some ice yellow just to do some specular, some top highlights, just to show where the light is reflecting, where that sunlight is reflecting in those very, very top highlights. And again, this is a choice in terms of, you don't have to use this necessarily. If you want to maintain that kind of like demonic yellow highlight, then that's absolutely fine. But you can see here, this just, I suppose, just shows the shininess of the armor at this point, and just demonstrates the light reflecting off it. But I think this is a good addition, and you can always, as a FYI, use this as a edge highlight as well, this color. I'm not going to be doing any edge highlights. I'm going to be negatively edge highlighting with some battle damage a little bit later, but if you did want to, I think it would probably make a lot of sense just to use this color, just to do some edge highlighting as well, if you like that vibe to your models. Right, next up we're going to return to the helmet now that it's completely dry. So you can see here we primed it in white, we added that dark skin tone, and then here I'm just hitting it with pure white with a sponge. Now this is a different sponge to the one that I was using before, obviously because it's a different paint. Lots of people ask me whether I reuse these sponges. I do not. You might see that as a little bit wasteful, you might want to wash them, that's absolutely fine, but I get through an awful lot of these, and I think that kind of really once you've used it, I think it's unlikely that you're probably going to use it again. But that sponge that I used before when I was doing the yellows, I was just using a single sponge and working my way up through the colours. I wasn't changing a sponge every time I changed the colour. If anything, it's quite nice that they kind of like mix those colours, mix on the sponge together when we transition from one colour to another, just to soften the transitions. Right, next up we're going to do the red elements on this model. So I went for a mixture of Basilisk Red and Pure Red for this. Probably favouring slightly the pure red, maybe in a sort of a 60-40 split, but a 50-50 split will work as well. And this just gives us a nice dark base coat to our kind of our red elements, and we're going to wash this, and then we're going to do some further highlights on this a little bit later. I think it's interesting where to place reds on Imperial Fists models and Imperial Fist Terminators. I kind of went with the big icon at the front just to show you guys how I would do some reds, but you could do that in grey if you wanted to. And in fact, I did the Crux Terminatus on the knee and on the shoulder pad in grey. Nothing too exciting, just kind of like worked my way up from a dark grey base coat to a lighter, just adding increasing amounts of white from there, just to get it lighter and lighter. And then here I've used gunmetal to paint what I would describe as the soft armor joints. You could paint those in black if you wanted to, or in silver. Just sometimes painting them in silver is just a little bit easier. And then any other parts that were silver, I just base coated them as well. Left that all to dry, and then I'm now applying my wash over the silver elements as well as the red elements. So the dark skin shade is going over all of those parts, and this just works really well. It's like a catch-all wash, I find, with this dark skin shade. Like, you've seen me use it for washing or adding some depth to the whites. You've now seen me use it for adding depth to the reds, and I'm going to use it on the silvers in a moment as well. So it's a good catch-all wash, and just in terms of silvers, it just makes things a little bit more interesting than just using like a black tone or something like that. Don't forget, if you want to purchase some of these paints, be it the bundle or whether you want to purchase any other paints in the future, then if you use the code MEDAS5, you can get 5% off at checkout. And I've got even better and bigger discounts for those Patreons who've signed up, and you guys get extra money off if you are a Patreon. So there you go, there's an incentive to sign up right now. It's going to cost you $3.99 to sign up to my Patreon. Right, moving on to the next element. So now we have left that to dry completely. I'm going to be moving up to just pure red, and then what I'm doing here is just adding some highlights on the raised areas. This isn't, you don't need to spend too long on this. Just on the raised areas, leaving the darkest areas alone, we can just add some highlights, and then we're going to be moving up to a different red, a more desaturated red a little bit later. We'll talk about kind of the choices of reds, and perhaps why I went for this particular red, or why I think it's particularly useful. But as you can see here, we're just going around adding those highlights to our model. I think again, it's a choice, isn't it, whether or not you want to use red in such a obvious way, like on the shield. You know, I think when I was doing it, I was like, oh, I could do this in grey, and that would make a lot of sense as well. I quite like the chest eagle being in red, but I just wanted to show off how I'd go about doing this more than, you know, any kind of like stylistic choice. Next up, we're going to be using Blood Chalice, which again, so this is quite a desaturated red, but bordering on a pink highlight here, and that's okay. Like, I quite like pinky highlights for reds. I think they look good, and they look superb for things like purity seals, and I think, you know, you could use more orange tones, but this is a good demonstration of something that's kind of like more pinky. And if you want to further develop these highlights and you want to go, I want them even shinier, or I want those highlights even brighter, you can add increasing amounts of matte white into this in order to do that. You see here, I've added a little bit more white into it, and I'm just adding further highlights and additional highlights onto the red areas. Right, next up, so I'm not going to gloss the whole model, because I recognise that not everybody might have a airbrush. So what I've done is I've just glossed one shoulder pad where I want my transfer to go, and then using microset and microsol, I'm then applying my transfers. The new style Games Workshop transfers really are excellent. They take kind of literally minutes to conform to the area that they are going down on using microset and microsol. But a glossed surface, I find, just allows the air bubbles not to form underneath the transfer, which is what we want to try and avoid. Right, next up, you can see here what I'm doing is, once the transfer is completely set, I'm then using a very sharp hobby knife just to chip away at that transfer, and this basically starts to create kind of scratches within the transfer, and I'm just showing the underlying yellow showing through. I could just sponge on some like fiendish yellow or some demonic yellow. That wouldn't be a problem at all. This, I think, just kind of, nice little tip. I think it looks good. You can use this on your tanks as well. Don't forget that transfer, it isn't a sticker on your model. It's literally it will have been painted on by a Magos or a servitor, and it is a layer of paint. So as it's the last layer of paint that's over the model, it's going to be the first layer of paint that comes off in the thick of battle. So doing this, exposing the yellow underneath, I think looks quite cool. Right, this is the bit, as I was painting it, this is the bit I was looking forward to most, which was adding our battle damage using oak brown. A really nice natural colour for our chipping, oak brown against the yellow. It works really, really nicely. So what you can see me doing here is just taking a tiny bit of sponge and some tweezers, and I'm just dabbing this over the model where I think that there's going to be areas where the battle damage will be inflicted on the armor plate. Using a sponge and using a small bit of sponge and a set of tweezers just gives me a little bit more control than just using a larger piece of sponge on my fingers, and it allows me to get into the nooks and crannies of the model as well, particularly that leg hidden behind the shield. It was a bit of a nightmare to kind of like get to when I was sponging, so doing it this way I think just helps you get to it. Now I think with battle damage, less is more. You don't need to go necessarily absolutely over the top for this, and just remember, we spent a long time building up that yellow, and we do want to show it off, so we don't want to completely cover it in battle damage. But I do see these guys in the thick of battle. Whenever I read about Space Marines, they're always in the thick of battle, so we want to reflect that with the chipping on the armor plate here. So you can see here I'm going in with a brush now with the oak brown and just further reinforcing that. And this is what I meant before about negatively edge highlighting. We don't need to edge highlight every single edge on this with this color, but just going round, just dabbing here and there. If you haven't got a steady hand, this kind of thing is actually perfect. Like a light colored armor plate might be the perfect army for you, because you can just be a little bit haphazard, just picking out areas on the edges here, and then that combination of that sponge chipping and then the combination of just adding a little bit of brush chipping, just I think adds to the overall effect and makes it look a little bit more realistic as well. And then you stop at the point that you think is appropriate. You can add a few scratches here and there. Next up, we've got shining silver, and you can dry brush this on. I just use a little bit of sponge just to add a little bit of chipping here and there, scuffs and scratches and those kinds of things. And this is just like a really easy way to kind of like add some luster back into those metallics after you've used tones and washes over them or shades. And then I'll use a little bit of True Blood on that a little bit later as well on the hammer. And then for the base, I painted the rock I think it was uniform grey, just a generic mid-tone grey colour. And then you can see me here just adding some liquid pigments to the base. This is AK's Light Dust. It's sitting right in front of me, Light Clay. So this is AK's Light Clay, and this is just straight out the bottle, and I'm just adding this with an old brush onto the bottom of the base. And then this will dry, giving a very matte kind of like weathering powdered effect. Like if you've not used weathering powders before, I'd highly recommend trying to, grabbing a couple of liquid pigments, because they're dead easy to use. They don't make as much mess as kind of like the containers, and they really, really simple and effective bases. And then you can see here, this is the model completed, ready to make war upon the enemy. So that is the end of the tutorial. I hope you guys found it useful, and I hope you can see the power of the sponge and what you're capable of doing with a sponge as well. No oils were harmed in the making of this this video, as I would typically do in most of my videos. But just a few final shout outs. A massive thank you to all my Patreons who allow me to continue to do the job I love, which is making content and painting Warhammer for a living. Thank you guys, we really appreciate it. And if you want to sign up to my Patreon, it's $3.99 a month. That's it. Absolute bargain for extra tutorials and Q&As. And then a big thank you to the Army Painter as well for kind of coming up with the idea for this video, but also for supporting me and my endeavours this year. Coming to the end of the year, it's gone so quickly, so thank you to those guys as well. As I say, if you want to sign up to my Patreon, please do, but if you would prefer not to, that's absolutely okay. But don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment as well. I would appreciate that muchly. Thanks ever so much, guys, and I shall see you on the next one.